Hey guys, and welcome back to another OnShape tutorial. This one will follow on from the trammel tutorial where we created all the parts of the trammel, and in this one we're going to assemble it. So what you'll need to do is in your OnShape, open up the trammel document you created last time by double clicking on it. Once OnShape loads your workspace, we're going to go down the bottom here to assembly 1 because we're creating a new assembly. If your document doesn't have an assembly tab down the bottom, just click the plus and then create assembly. Alright, so the first thing we're going to need to do is insert some parts from our part studio. So we go to the top of our assembly window here, we click insert, and I'm just going to insert the whole of part studio 1. So I'm going to click that, and then it drops in all 3 of our parts, which is a good starting point, and we're just going to click the tick at the top to let it know that we're happy with that. Alright, now if you remember from last time where we assembled our hinge, the first thing we need to do is fix one of the parts in space so that it can't be moved around, and in this case that's going to be our base. So if we can either right click on the base in our workspace or right click on the base in our model tree and select fix, and now that means that we can't move it around. So if we try and hold our left click and move it, we get the little prohibited symbol, and that tells us that we can't move that part. We can, however, click on our handle and our slider and move them around into space, and that is actually what we want to be able to do at the moment, so it's useful to be able to do that. So the first thing we're going to do is create the mate for our sliders. So we're actually going to need to add in 2 more sliders. So I'm going to go back to the insert button at the top. I'm going to click slider and then click one in our workspace, then click slider again and click another one into our workspace, and then click the tick to let it know that we're finished. Alright, last time we used a fastened mate to start off, and a fastened mate is not really good for this because we need our parts to be able to move. So we're going to use something called a planar mate. So what I'm going to do is click the planar mate button. I'm going to go to the side of one of my sliders and click the mate connector that's in the center. So remember, when we mouse over one of the sides or faces on our parts, we get all these dots, and they're called mate connectors. We want to go the center one on the side of our slider. We're then going to zoom in on our base, and in one of the channels you're going to click the slider which is on the center of the side of one of our channels. So I'm going to click that one. Now you can see at the moment it's kind of not doing what we want, and the slider's kind of gone into the material. We just need to click this button which says flip primary axis, and that will tell it that we want our axis oriented the other way, and we'll put it into the channel. The next thing we need to do is put some limits on where our slider can go. So you can see here we've got Z, Y, and X axis. We want it to, the X axis is this red axis. We want our slider to be able to move along that axis. So we're not going to set any limits for that. However, this Z axis and the Y axis, we don't want our slider to be moving up and down, and we don't want our slider to be rotating. So for our Y limits and Z limits, we're just going to put 0 for each of those. So 0, 0, 0, 0, and then click the tick to let it know that we're finished. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is do another planar mate. So select planar mate at the top, and we're just going to repeat that process again. So I'm going to click on the side of my slider here in the center, and then I'm going to do the same on this next channel. So I'm going to zoom in, find the center of the side of our channel and click. Okay, this time it's put the slider in a way that I'm happy with, so I can just click the tick here. No, I don't want to do that because I forgot to change the limits. So what I'm going to do is just close this mate, double click the mate that I just created, planar mate 2, tick limits, and we're going to do the same again. So we want our slider to be moving in the X axis, which is the red one labeled X. I don't want it to be moving along the y-axis. So I'm going to go 0, tab, 0, tab, 0, tab, 0, and put 0 for all of the y dimensions and all of the z dimensions. We don't want our slider to be able to move in those directions. So I'm going to click the tick, and then the last thing I'm going to do is get this other slider and do another planar mate. Click the center of the side of our slider, and then the center of the side of the next channel. Okay, I might just rotate that a little bit more to make sure that's the correct one. There we go. Now again, it's put it in a way that is not the way that we want, so we just got to click this flip primary axis button. Go to our limits. Again, the x-axis is the direction that we want it to be able to move in. So y is going to be 0, 0, z 0, 0. And then I'll click the tick to let it know that we're finished. All right, the next thing we're going to do is connect our handle to the 3 of our sliders. So before we do that, though, you'll just want to check that you have your sliders organized the correct way. You don't want to have more than one slider in the same channel. So if I click this slider at the moment, you can see I can move it up and down that channel. There's no other sliders in that channel. This one I can move it along this channel, and this one I can move it along that channel. There should only be one slider in each of the channels that dissects our hexagonal base. Alright, so to make this easier, this next part, what I'm going to do is actually go to my base in the model tree, and you can see it's got a little eye symbol next to it. I'm just going to hide it to make life easier. And what we're going to do for these mates is we're going to do the Revolute mate. And we used the Revolute mate for our hinge so that our hinge could rotate. So I'm going to select Revolute mate, then I'm going to rotate around to the underside of my handle. I'm going to select the mate connector in the center of one of the holes, and then I'm going to connect that to the hole on one of my sliders. And then I'll just click the tick here to solve that one. Then, because I clicked the tick, it's asking me to keep creating Revolute mates. So I'm going to just do the next one. And I'm just going to rotate under, choose the mate connector at the bottom of our next hole on our handle, and connect that to our next slider. And then click solve to solve the connection, and then the tick. And then we'll do our last one, which is this hole, and that's going to be connected to this slider, and then we need to click solve. Great. Click the tick here to tell it that I'm done, and then close that dialog box there. Now we can bring our base back by clicking the eye symbol here, and then we're done. So all we need to do now is animate. So if I go to any one of these Revolute mates that we created, right click on it and go to animate. Because we don't want this to go backwards and forwards, we want it to just keep rotating around. We're going to change from reciprocate to loop. Remember, you can change the amount of steps if you want it to go faster or slower. Less steps is faster, more steps is slower. So I'm just going to go 250 steps and then click play. And there's our functioning trammel. So you'll be able to rotate around and watch it as it functions. Again, it's a pretty visually interesting mechanism. And that's it for this tutorial. So once you've done that, if you could take a screenshot of your assembled trammel, maybe try and get the animation dialog box in the screenshot so I can see that you've been able to make it function and work correctly, and upload that underneath this post in Google Classroom. And that's it for this tutorial. Thanks.